like what I found with these, what I found is watching me, listening to you. No, I might as well be the Terminator. There's like no expression or emotion or anything being
But
shown.
it's the same for me. When you're talking, I'm just like
Yeah.
resting bitch face, like just looking at you back here. It's so
Um,
awkward.
funny.
Hey guys, welcome to the Nikta and Jason show. I'm Nikta, that's Jason. Today, we are going to reflect on some of our experiences working at a startup or a small business versus a big company versus an agency, because I understand you have some agency experience as well, Jason.
I do.
So tell me, I mean, where should we start? Like, do you want to give me the briefest outline of like, did you first work at a startup and then you moved to an agency and then you moved to a big company? Like, what's your
Yeah. So
career?
that's kind of the order. So I started in startups. I did a few of those. That I don't think one of them still exists. And then I moved to agencies because I kind of had ambitions to become a consultant, so I could work 6 months and then live on a beach for 6 months, and that didn't pan out. And then large companies is kind of now my, the go-to, I'd say. And reflecting on that, I did a lot of reflecting on the needs of each when I was transitioning to a large company. And so there's definitely differences in what you do and what you're exposed to and what you're responsible for. And I think like if you've only done one, you shouldn't. You end up learning a whole lot more about the whole thing about making software when you have to when you're kind of forced into these other roles, which is dictated by by the the size of the company. So
yeah, no, I agree. I am so grateful that I haven't worked in an agency, but I've done startup work and then I've worked at a large company, and it's so different. And product management in particular is so different because, just to give a couple examples, like at a startup, you don't always have the luxury of having, let's say, a UX researcher. So as a product manager, you have to just like wear that hat and brush up on your UX research skills and stuff. Whereas at a large company, I mean, there are so many product managers at the company that I work at right now, which is a big company, that have never done an owner or a user interview themselves. And that's kind of normal because we have a team of UX researchers who do that kind of work, right?
Right. Yeah. I would say, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What I was going to say is that even having a product manager is a luxury in a startup. And having been in a startup for most of my early career, I had a real tough time adjusting to actually having one. And I didn't see the point of one because I'd just done all that stuff before. And why don't this person is going to do all the like, oh, I have the ideas and then they leave. Like, I didn't see that was, I still kind of like, oh, that product manager's telling me what to do again. Oh God. I still have that in my head because we didn't have them. And, product and there was no distinction between product and engineering. We were all the same people. And so personally, I'm better for it. I get business models. I get all these product things. I can do UI design too. And so you're exposed to a whole lot more areas beyond just the code. And at a large company, like you kind of hinted at, is that there's very much like lanes and you stay in those lanes.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And I wouldn't because I had been exposed to other things. And I got complaints about that. Like, who's this guy telling me what UI should look like? Startup engineer, right. That's what I am. Anyway. So yeah, there's definitely like, if all you want to do is write code as an engineer, go for big company, because no one's going to expect you to do anything else.
Have you experienced a difference in terms of like urgency and the level of like stress
Oh, not really, but it's stressful for different reasons. So we talked about, or talked a bit about dates and deadlines. So dates and deadlines, they always seem to be, they're always there, but the reasons for them are different. So, oh, we got to make this sale, this trade show so we can demo and maybe get some sales at a startup, right? The client wants it by then. So then in an agency, it's dictated to you and you can't move it. And then in large companies, as we discussed, it's basically like management says ship it by now, ship it by now. And so, you being like, and I remember being raging against all of them because they're also arbitrary. But I think reflecting,
The trade show is the least arbitrary. The trade show makes sense.
right. Yes, but why are you relying on trade shows for your sales? Would be a question I'd kind of would fall out from that. But if I were going to go back to a startup, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're gonna need it by then. Okay, cool, got it. I wouldn't be like having this massive crisis of like, what is going on with a startup? And the
Right.
same with an agency. Oh, you need it by then? Cool. I can give you something close, right? I can do the negotiation. It's no problem. I still have a problem with those like C-level. Hey, let's ship it by summer. It's March and we haven't started. I don't care. I'm managing, and they just throw this thing on the table and walk away. Those I still have a problem with. But so anyway, it's there. The agent like date-driven development's there in all three, but the reasons are different, and you can kind of maybe.
Do you find that like some of the maybe unspoken consequences lead you to experience more or less stress? So at the startup world, there's this concept of like you're running out of runway, and at some point you're just going to run out of money unless you've achieved like product market fit and figured out how to like sell enough, whereas at a large company it's like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, we have like all these other eggs in different baskets. And so really it's more about like your annual performance review is probably going to reflect poorly, as opposed to like all of the employees and their families now have to deal with the consequences of this startup going bankrupt, right?
Right. Yeah, in the agency, it's even more like if you don't do this contract good enough to get an extension, you're not going to have a job. So there's definitely like you directly, right? I find there's a lot more negotiation. You can have a lot more. You can negotiate a lot more with the agent in the agency. You can say, I don't think we should do this necessarily, or maybe we can defer this. And the client's like, they don't know anything about tech. And well, let's go back to that in a second. They don't know anything about tech, so they will like listen to you. And that's kind of a big deal. Like you in an agency, you aren't around people who live the same life you do. They aren't deep into this making a product. They have a completely other job, and that's what they care about, and that's their expertise. And software is just kind of peripheral. So they don't know all these technical terms. They don't know how software is made. They just want, make me software and you make it. And then this is exactly what I wanted, or this is close, or whatever. And you really get an appreciation for like how little people care about, like all these dumb arguments that maybe you and I get into on the show, or engineers will get into, these huge fights about, all kinds of things. They just don't matter. They straight up don't matter. And I can't like be bothered to participate in them anymore. They just don't matter at all. So go off, come up with your decision, come back, and we'll make the software. Like you end up seeing how little of it really matters.
But I've also heard that agencies are like the most stressful of them all, even though you're kind of making it sound like you have a little bit more control, and because you're the experts and the client is not, like, you can pitch something or propose something. But I've also heard that it's like just a ruthless business.
Yes, it is. And it depends on how much you know about being a consultant and how much you know about how they truly make money, and and where you are in the hierarchy, right? There's still a team, and like if you're just Joe developer, it is stressful because you're at the whim of everybody else, and you have to ship all these things, and they're all dependent on you. And then maybe they're going to be like, oh no, we're actual engineers, and so then they put all these like other non-functional requirements on you, and really like if it just works, that's all the client cares about. And so yeah, you definitely could be stressful.
Talk to me. Sorry. Go ahead. Finish your sentence.
Yes, you could be, if you're a junior engineer and you're in an agency, that's your first job. Yeah, totally stressful. But as you can become more senior and you learn to communicate, that's another thing, is you have to learn how to communicate to non-technical people about whatever you're working on, which we've also discussed before. You really have to learn that in agencies.
Talk to me about compensation.
Oh, go to a large company. If you want to be well compensated, go to a large company. It's so much better.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
the perks, like, so I worked, where did when did I start? I started shortly after the tech crunch. So when tech died in 2002 or something, and I got hired, and I started in 2004 or 5 full time. And sometimes your management is like, you should be lucky to even have a job. And this was at a startup. And you don't like, I guess my point is money, startups don't have money, or they're, I did it in Canadian startups. So I think there's just way less money, and they're cheap. And, but they could never come out and say it. They could never come out and say, we don't have the money to pay you. We can't do this. We can't do that because we don't have the money. They wouldn't say that. They'd be like, I think I asked for a new title and a raise. And then what I got was, well, let's see if you can do the job first, and then we'll give you the title and the raise. And I'm like, that's not cool. And I had to go back and think about it and like, wait a minute. My boss at the time, she didn't have any control over the budget and couldn't say yes at all. And so but couldn't say that she didn't have the money, and so sold it that way.
Yeah.
You get a lot of freedom, you'd learn a lot, but you're not going to be well compensated at a startup.
I think that the direction that you and I both had our careers go, where like we both started at startups and then it ended up at a big company, is kind of a sweet way to do it. Because at the startup, when you're super junior and stuff, you get all that exposure, you learn really quickly, things are moving fast, you're forced to like take on a whole bunch of different roles. It's great. And like whatever, you go home and you eat your ramen every night. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, yeah, it would be nice to actually make some like, not that I made bad money at startups or that they didn't, but it's just like, it's different. It's comparison. And then, at startups, they give you like options and like, you're to try to retain you and stuff. And it's like, okay, maybe one day these things will maybe be worth something.
No.
Whereas at large tech companies, if it's a public company and stuff, you'll sometimes get RSUs, registered stock units, like that are form part of your compensation, or there's things like bonuses that are, based on your performance and on the company. Like there's clear structures for all this stuff, right? They have a massive team of payroll and accounting and HR people who come up with these models. Whereas at a startup, it's like every conversation is like oh, hey, so I just like shipped that big feature. Can I get a bonus? And then it's like, okay, well, how would we even do a bonus? Like, have we ever given out a bonus before? Like, right, I don't know. Right. Should we just like should we just give her an Amazon gift card? Yeah, that sounds like a good bonus. Like, okay, where it's not like you don't have these structures. So in that way, it's like so much better to work.
Yeah. It's always like, well, we're talking to the board right now about compensation. Like everyone's always talking to the board. Like, how long does that take to wrap up? It shouldn't take very long. You just can't do it because you can't afford to, and you can't say that. So
and it's exactly what you said, is like who ultimately has true ownership of a budget? Because at a large company, every department head or,
Right.
manager or VP or whatever has a budget, and they can work with that, and they can, at the end of the day, they can make a decision about who gets what kind of bonus.
Right.
But at a startup, it often is like, oh, we got to run that by the CEO, and he's in Boston right now, at a trade show. So like,
Yeah. And
you're out
you
of
don't
luck.
even have a yearly budget. You're like, you just don't know
Like
what
everything is in negotiation. Yeah.
um, and so that's compensation, but there's also like the day-to-day working in an office, and it's, I'd say it's better at a large company as well, because there's just like, they might serve lunch or breakfast and lunch, or
I
you can
know,
have
but Jason, what kind of
so
superficial, shallow workers are you and I? If we're like, big companies are better because they serve you lunch, and also sometimes they have a massage therapist come in.
that's never happened to me, but yeah, it is so cushy and wonderful,
It is cushy.
and like you it, I'd point things out like, hey, if we did this a little differently, it might be a little better, but it was never like complaining or something. And we'd always, you and I would laugh actually about, there's a whole Slack channel dedicated to lunch at headquarters, and the complaining, that was just like mind boggling. You guys
I
are
know.
so good, and like,
I found the tomato sauce a little salty, but otherwise delicious. Thank you so much, team. It was like so like passive aggressive.
yeah, and it's just, it's just these young kids right out of high
Entitled.
school who don't know any better. They've yet to pay for anything, and themselves, and then they come to these things and they're just treated so well. And that's actually like part of the whole, that's that's kind of intentional, right? Like, when they all started doing it, it was to like get new grads. Hey, yeah, we'll do your dry cleaning. Oh, you happen to have a child? We'll do childcare. Like, just here's a laptop and keep writing code to make us lots of money. That's the whole deal,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
To
And
be fair, startups do still have a lot of those cushy things, tech startups, and especially like you made a really good point about Canada versus like, let's say US. I have no idea what it would be like in Europe or the rest of the world, Middle East, Asia. I don't know what startups are like there, but certainly in Silicon Valley, if you're a startup and you have a couple 10 million or 100 million under your belt in investment, you're also going full out with the lunches and the because you have to, because you're competing for that talent.
yeah, maybe.
Um,
I've really no interest in working there, but yeah, it's pretty competitive and cutthroat, I think. So
yeah. Okay, last question, Jason. Where would you prefer to work now that you've experienced agency, startup, and large company? And where would you submit your resume for a new job? All of the above?
no, I'd probably right now I do large company because of my family situation and things like that. But let's say when the
I mean,
kids are
because you have children and you want something that's a little bit more like stable and
stable and
predictable.
like cushy, yeah. And in terms of how much money you're making, cushy in terms of how much money you're making. But I think, if once the kids are out of my hair and like, hey, you're in university now, see you later, call me at Christmas, then I might go back to a startup because, I'd like to try it, having learned all that I've learned, and give it a whirl, see if I could do it. But I'd be like a co-founder or pretty high up, like if the options ever turned out to anything, they'd be like humongous, and that's, as a founder, that's what I kind of want to be. But for now, yeah, large company.
Please hire me as your first product manager.
I don't think you want to work for me as a product manager.
I definitely don't want to work for you. Okay, guys.
Then?
Yeah, I 100% agree with your answer. Also, I'm kidding. I would probably work for you. I'd consider it. And same exact answer. I am happy with a large company right now. I appreciate some of the stability and the structure and stuff. I'm still learning a lot from a large company setting. You just learn different things. You know, you learn about things like globalization or like entering new markets or whatever. Like it's a different, or branching out it to diversify your revenue streams. Like there's still a lot to learn. It's not like you just like stay in your one tiny lane and like don't grow or learn at all. So I'm happy with a large company, but maybe one day I would love to go back to startup world, especially if, you know, it allows me to have a little bit more control over the direction and the vision of the startup. Maybe you and I should co-found a company together.
No.
Okay, guys.
Or maybe we should make this our revenue stream. So click subscribe.
Click subscribe.
T-shirts whenever we come out with them.
Tell us in the comments below if you've worked at these different types of companies, and if so, what's your preference? What's better? We want to hear about it. Okay? See you next time. Bye.
Funny, do you do amusement parks? Are you a ride person or no rides? Yeah, same. So I went to Disney World like 13 years ago with Lindsay and her family, and they'd gone to Disney World all the time. And they had this thing where this Twilight Zone elevator ride where you go up and they take you through this Twilight Zone thing, and then they drop you, and then they take you up, and then they drop you, and then they take you up. And they're taking photos.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, it's terrible. Like I literally you come off the seat, right? And my belt wasn't super tight, so I came off the seat, and I'm like, holy shit. But then they take a bunch of pictures, and everyone's like, ah, ah. And I'm like this. This is what I look like. Like I'm freaking out. I'm like going to die. Nothing.
You should use that in the intro. That's a great story.
Well, maybe. We're recording it.